official town hall meeting for Motherland. And I'm really, really thankful for Julian to join us and to go deep into challenging us specifically on the impact side of things, but also on the general side of things. So, Julian, thank you. And I would hand over to Sebastian for a presentation, and after that, as a beginning of Julian challenging us, Julian will also have the opportunity to share about his background, about his views, and all the rest before he takes us apart. Okay. With that, over to you, Sebastian. Stage is yours. And everybody, please mute yourself while we're having the conversations until the third part. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, welcome all, and especially, obviously, Julian, who is going to challenge us today, which is, I think, really important, because just building slides, and that's not getting it challenged is probably worth nothing. As we have learned, ideas are not, so to say, the most important things, but we need to execute, need to make our hands dirty, and need to get the ideas challenged. And this is what this session will be all about. And I'm happy to share with you now some slides about Motherland. And so to tell you more about our initiatives, where we are right now, and the backgrounds, and our vision. So let's see. So you should be able to see the slides now. Good. Good, so let's start. So we see ourselves, Motherland, as an ecosystem orchestrator. So I'm not going to deep dive on why that is. I think you're going to learn that during the presentation. Before I start, maybe a few sentences on the background, how we came to that. Over the course of the last years, I was happy to build up several accelerator programs in Sri Lanka and also in Ethiopia, and working with a lot of entrepreneurs all over the globe. And what I've learned is that there is a group of people, entrepreneurs, that are really doing everything, with a lot of talent and a lot of drive to develop their countries and the well-being of their people, by being entrepreneurs, utilizing entrepreneurship and technology and innovation. And by seeing all of that, Thomas and I ask ourselves now more than 1 year back, so what we can do here to accelerate that development. And the result of all of that is Motherland. So as I have said, we really believe in the power of impact by entrepreneurship and technology. And that gives us our mission, to accelerate the development of African communities by creating self-sufficient and reliant local economies by utilizing social solutions created by African startups. So African startups, we see it's really important. It's not about exporting our solutions to the African continent, but as we have learned, there are plenty of startups creating solutions with their eyes and their experience of the African people and continent for the African people. And that is really, really important. So as we all know, there are plenty of challenges, especially for the global South. And this affects especially the perspectives of the younger generation, and the inequalities between the global North and the global South. I think we all are aware of that, but all of this is massively leveraged by climate change. And where all these challenges in the end materialize is and are the local communities, because they have to deal with all of that. And so that's why we see the local self-sufficiency and self-reliance of those communities as so important, really to tackle all these type of challenges from bottom up. And we see a couple of very, very good reasons, yeah, why it makes sense to do it now, yeah, and also why to focus on Africa. Yeah, when you look at this map, which shows the global human development index that is created by the UN Development Program, you see the deep red colors all over the place in Africa. Yeah, and so that shows, yeah, the biggest, let's say, potential for development, yeah, we have in Africa. Yeah, and so it's not just for getting out of poverty, but it's also an opportunity, yeah, to develop the countries of the continent and the people of the continent. And also, the second thing is we see that because of the population development, also in comparison with the other continents, Africa is really on the verge of becoming a global superpower when it comes to youth. Yeah, because they're really catching up with Asia, yeah, and outpace all the other continents when it comes to youth in the age of 15 to 24. Yeah, and by the 2050s, there will be 500 million people in Africa between 15 and 24, and steadily growing. The third good reason is internet and accessibility to internet, especially via mobile internet, is growing steadily. So still Africa has to catch up, yeah, but it's catching up steadily. And just imagine Starlink is going to launch in 2021 in Africa as well. Yeah, and latest at that point in time, internet will be potentially available everywhere in Africa. The fourth good reason is that technology startups in Africa are growing steadily, yeah, year over year, around 50%. Yeah, when you look at the funding, yeah, that African startups have received over the last years, and in 2020, it was around 700 million USD. But if you compare it, yeah, to the global volume of venture capital, then it's really just a fraction. Yeah, the total value was in 2020 at 300 billion. So there is a lot space to catch up and allocate venture capital to the African startups, and we absolutely see that happen. And the fifth reason, and which is probably the most important, we absolutely believe that we need to break the misconception that we have about Africa. And we need to start telling the true story about the African people, their culture, their excellence, their talent, and their passion. Yeah, and this is reflected not only in the startups, yeah, but across the people all over Africa. And we tend to have a totally different picture in mind when we think about Africa, which is war, crime, poverty, etc. And I think this needs to change now. So how do we tackle this? Yeah, we think an accelerator program, it can be a good solution, as we see in many other accelerator programs that are around the continent. Yeah, but we want to make it different, and for a very good reason, because we see that the startups, they are creating the tools to accelerate the development of the communities. And that's why we call it an ecosystem accelerator. Yeah, accelerating the development of the communities and accelerating the startups in one program. So how does that work? Yeah, also based on the trend of we are coming from centralized solutions and structures more to distributed solutions. Yeah, we see all over the planet arising. Yeah, and also this is empowered by the Young of Moore's law, called Wright's law, which describes the cost degradation of technology created, yeah, over time and by the units created. So you can imagine internet will be available across Africa, yeah, and to a very, very cheap price. So this is because of rights law, and we also going to see technologies defund all over Africa in the near future. So we think also that will work because the communities, yeah, that are already there, yeah, can be empowered by providing infrastructure from technology startups, and that will drive the development towards more self-sufficiency and self-reliance of those communities. So how does that look in practice? Yeah, I give you an example, and there are many more, but I think that example shows it very well. So if we look at the challenge of food waste, yeah, which we are all aware of in many communities, not only in Africa, also at our place, we need not only one solution, yeah, for example, cooling and storage, yeah, because this is not solving the problem at all. But we also have to look at how to get the electricity for the cooling storage, yeah, and there are startups in Africa as well, yeah, and how to improve processing and refinement of food, yeah, and finance of, for example, the solar energy and the cooling storage, yeah, and how to get the market intelligence to access the markets properly and bundle the buying and the selling power in the market. Yeah, and last but not least, we need distribution and logistics, and there are also startups. So we have created a database, which I come to on the next slide, that can all provide the solutions that we are looking for to solve the challenges like food waste in a systemic way. So we have worked hands-on from the beginning, yeah, and we did that and do that currently in 4 phases. So the first phase is identifying the socioeconomic leveraging point, yeah, and we started really, really broad by saying, okay, what challenge can be solved with entrepreneurship and technology in a scalable way? And we asked the African entrepreneurs and people across several online conferences we hosted last year, and we identified the post-harvest value chain, so everything that is happening after the harvest with food. And in the next step, we said, okay, where there are challenges and opportunities, there should be startups. And so we did a research. Yeah, first we identified over 600 startups. Then we qualified those startups even deeper. Yeah, and in the end, we have built up a database of 324 startups that are qualified in the socioeconomic leveraging point. We have selected the post-harvest value chain. And right now, the next step is identifying the community. Yeah, because without the community, we cannot define the challenges proper enough, and then also not matching the right startups with their solution to the challenges. And so we are doing this thanks to our team in South Africa and also the rest of the team that is across the continent. I'm coming to that also later. Yeah, to find the community which is going to host the accelerator program on the ground. After we have run the accelerator program, we are ready to bring that solutions first nationwide to other communities, but we see also the potential to scale that continent-wide. So where is Motherland? During the online conferences, we started in many, many countries across Africa, and we selected and were able to find committed people to support the initiative of Motherland across Africa. So a couple of people are sitting in Kenya, yeah, in Zimbabwe, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Ethiopia, in Sierra Leone, and last but not least, mainly in South Africa. And because we have the strong team in South Africa, and 2 of them are at least today here in the call, Herman and Waynand, yeah, we are currently selecting 5 communities, which we are going to have interviews in July and select the final community for the prototype in July. And then we will be able to start the first accelerator program of Motherland in the second half of 2021. After we have run the program, as I said in the slide before, we're able to scale that nationwide and then also continent-wide. So how does the program will look like? So I'm only focusing on two aspects. So we are selecting the right startups, as I said, and then we are going to have two elements. Yeah, first is the implementation sprint, yeah, where we really on the ground implement the solutions of the startups. And secondly, we are going to have learning sprints together with the startups on the ground at the community to learn together what is working, what is not working, and how to improve the implementation of the solutions of the startups on the ground. And finally, we are having a demo day where we are showing the results, yeah, the impact that we have created, and also the foundation for the next steps and the scalability of the program. So how does the economic engine looks like, yeah, for the community on the ground? So first, the startups that we bring in with Motherland, they are the infrastructure, yeah, to enable local business to grow and enhance the value creation at the community. So that is really addressing local entrepreneurs. That could be also a local farm, local businesses, small businesses that are along the value chain of post-harvest value chain to create more value for the community first, and then also bringing the value across the nation. So secondly, the farmers that are providing the supply, yeah, for the demand of the small businesses, but also the people that also will create hopefully more jobs, yeah, and also enhance the learning and experience of the people in the community. So everything are important building blocks, yeah, to develop the community, and we are sure that this will happen. So how are we structured as Motherland? Yeah, so we are going to found a nonprofit holding, yeah, that is then spinning off for-profit companies, for example, the accelerator program, and will fund as a spin-off also the spin-offs. So then we are going to attract a funding partner. So especially for Motherland, the holding, it will be a philanthropic money and grants, yeah, that also then will help to finance the accelerator program, and impact investing that is directly funneled into the accelerator program, and will invest also in impact startups that are part of the program. So, and when we're looking farther down the road, yeah, so because we need to have a business model that is able to generate money and funnel also money back into the nonprofit, yeah, to build new variants of Motherland. We see three main business models. The first one is a system integration, so integrating the solutions into as many communities as possible. Yeah, we see also the opportunity to build a system solution platform where communities access via a software platform the solutions of the startups we are working with, and an impact fund that is investing into the startups we are working with. So I talk a lot about impact, yeah, but then obviously the question will arise. So, okay, how do you measure impact? Yeah, so we first started with the SDGs, yeah, so like most of the current impact initiatives, and we are definitely focusing on SDG number 11, yeah, but we are interrelated to most of the other SDGs because we are developing the communities in a holistic way. But we think also because SDGs are going to focus on until 2030, yeah, and we need a more elaborated index, so to say, yeah, and we see that in the Human Development Index, the HDI of the United Nations, yeah, which is building a little bit more holistically on the long and healthy life of the people, the knowledge and the standard of living, creating altogether the Human Development Index. But this is mainly focusing on a nation level. Yeah, and we absolutely need to go at the community level. That's why we are currently developing our community HDI based on the ideas of the HDI. And we are going to further develop it based on the 8 forms of capital, provided or invented by Ethan Rowland and inspired by Ethan Soloview, that is building on different types of capital like financial, material, living, social, cultural, experiential, spiritual, and intellectual, all grounded on the Maslow's need. So impact, we see it absolutely as multi-dimensional, and this is a necessity. So first, the community, we are going to apply, as I said, the community HDI we are currently developing. For example, measuring the experiential capital in the increased skill set, the living capital of a healthy and sufficient nutrition, financial and social capital in the increased local economic activity of the community. On the startup side, we are going to measure the growth, so especially the follow-on financing of those tech startups, their market reach, so people directly impacted by the startups, and also the numbers in growth here. The financial numbers, looking at the sum of EBIT and the growth rate, EBIT margin and growth rate. So this needs to be around 20 to 30 to have a healthy startup, and the jobs created by the startups themselves. So for philanthropic investors, obviously the return on the patient capital that they provide, a qualified deal flow we can provide for them to invest into, in the end, the viability and the scalability of the business model of Motherland itself. And for the Motherland team, so I think we need to be effective, that especially points toward the scalability of Motherland, because if you're only able to serve a couple of communities, then we are not going to be as effective as we wanted to be as a team. And so we are really looking into that, and creating also a good economic livelihood and income for the team, for everyone who is working with us. So why we are going to make that a success? So Thomas and I, as the founders of Motherland, we have a vast experience, not only in tech and digital accelerator programs, etc., but we are also in the impact space for a couple of years. We are currently looking for an African co-founder, to complement the founding team. We have a fantastic team of African partners that are supporting us very, very actively in Africa and helping us, sitting most of the time in Berlin, really to see the African perspective and hear the African voice and all of that. We are happy to have already committed institutions to support Motherland and committed people that help us along the way. And we are currently looking especially for opening the right doors, getting us in touch with the people that are keen to do something in Africa that could help us. We are looking for partnerships, academic supporters, and growing steadily the African team. And yes, obviously, all of that is currently self-funded. And to bring it to the next level, we need to attract funding around €1 million, and donations, sponsorships, and investments, to run the program in Africa, to fund and cost the startups that are taking part in the program, and also building the holding of Motherland here in Europe. So, and all of this, and also together with you, we absolutely believe that we can solve the global challenges that we see and we are facing, and building and scaling ecosystems of solutions with the approach of Motherland. So thank you very much for listening. And I'm looking forward to the questions of Julian and also the rest of the participants in the call. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. So I'm pretty sure that everybody's bursting with questions now. And you didn't disappoint me, because yesterday I was explaining Motherland to Jonathan, and I told him to come here today because you would make a much better job do a much better job at explaining it than I think that's true. We'll hear from Jonathan about that later. Julian, now over to you.
I take the floor.
There you get the floor. Let's begin with hearing who you are. What drives you? Give us a little overview, introduction of yourself, and whenever you feel ready, start going into the questions.
Great. So briefly on me, my background is that I kind of do what I do on development economics as a hobby and as a job since more or less ever. So I started studying economics, and in this time already traveling to Africa, and then also working as a freelance consultant on financial viability, especially of development projects, so on long-term viability of projects in Africa and different countries. Going back then to uni, teaching development economics, also discussing a lot internally and externally where's the bang for the buck in development. And then jumping to KfW DEG, where I built and integrated impact more in the portfolio management and in the overall bonus system. So especially by measuring multidimensional impact in a single index, as you compare it to the Human Development Index, we built the development effectiveness rating, so the comparable index idea. And yeah, I was asked in this time by more and more people saying, hey, you are by your experience an impact expert. Yeah, so I can now claim this title. And since May, I started my own consultancy on impact, because I think team and purpose and everything at DEG is just great. But moving out and helping other institutions to speed up impact definition, measurement, and management can definitely help or even leverage even more impact on the ground. That's why I now try to do this in an adventurous new way, being freelancing and with my own business. Yeah, and we met and started discussing, as I did with a lot of other startups, or even like probably that's here and there also what shines through. I discuss also more with OECD or with larger banks. So it's again and again, I try to move in this impact market from smaller startups to large institutions. And you said, let's discuss. So I've seen Motherland twice. And I still think what I should do now is to try with a certain method. I have to ask you questions and make a little barbecue on your impact approach. Because I'm probably first thing is I'm convinced of the idea, but I think in the detail we always need to discuss, and that's why we're here. I think before I ask my first question, I will try to have first the 5 questions of the IMP project. Yeah. So what, the who, the how much, the contribution, and the risk discussed. That is just a general standard that is quite nice to get the audience also up to speed and everybody online. And then I try more to go from large to small. So from intent, define, framework, system, to more than measurement, KPI, how do you standardize, and then how do you plan to manage and actually implement. So these 2 IMP 5 questions, and then 1, 2, 3, define intention, measurement, and management. So yeah, my first thing is the IMP always says what tells us what outcome the enterprise is contributing to. So in my word, it would be more, what is your focus and how important is the outcome you create to the stakeholders? This is like you focus, yeah, ecosystem orchestrator. But what I understood and what I got answered by your presentation, why Africa? I understand now why you want Africa. You brought that in this presentation. I have not seen that before. And now my question is, how important is what you want to create to your stakeholders?
I'd like to give a first try to this, but Sebastian can dive in any time. The way we look at this is that our main stakeholders are the members of the local community.
Mm-hmm.
So the people living in a group of the upper scale, upper parts of Dunbar scale, around 4,000 people, who get the opportunity to become a little bit more self-sufficient and maybe anti-fragile in the face of the presence of the enormous challenges we're facing as humanity. So they can lift themselves into a position where things like education, economic activity, safe living become more reachable and more evenly distributed. That is at least how I would phrase it. But Sebastian,
So I obviously we have plenty of stakeholders. Yeah, when you go by the stakeholder definition. Yeah, but in the end, I would really see the communities, as Thomas pointed out, at the core. Yeah, because we see the community, so to say, as the flywheel. Yeah, we want to build. Yeah, and the flywheel first creates the self-sufficiency and self-reliancy, because this is the foundation for everything to come, right? And seeing that as a flywheel, that will have positive effects to the other stakeholders. And so the other stakeholders are the startups, obviously. Yeah, if they have plenty of functioning communities based on the infrastructure they provide, so the startups will have thriving business. Yeah, and if the startups have thriving business and we have impact investors, yeah, that were able to invest into the right startups at the right point in time, yeah, they will have massively financial gains, yeah, which then also drive more investments into the ecosystem, yeah, to drive that forward. And so, yes, there are plenty of stakeholders. Yeah, I just want to stick to those three now. Yeah, and I think, but the centerpiece is the flywheel of the community.
Mm-hmm. I just re-ask it again, because I think like the one question is what and the other is who. I think we spoke now a lot on who. You were first saying people on the ground, 4,000 people in one community. So that is the vocal point, startups and impact investors. I'm going to ask a bit more on this later. And the what, as I understood Thomas, self-sufficiency, I would claim this more like as a local, like very local community-based development. Yeah, you spoke also about lower inequality. I don't know if this is in comparison to worldwide or lower inequality within one community. And if you just, can you elaborate a bit more on this? What are you really pushing for this local community? Like, what is the impact you're going to create for the local community?
Focusing on the local community, I would say that the real impact for the local community is to be less dependent on actors that are economically stronger than they are right now. They are usually at almost literally at the end of the food chain. Mm-hmm. And by integrating the food chain into the local ecosystem, we hope to create an environment where people are less dependent on the state actors, on the big corporate actors that allow them to unfold economic activity on the ground, that then lifts the entire community off out of the current situation. So the real lever that we see is opening windows or doors into local economic activity, and through that other types of activity.
Maybe to add to that, yeah. So what we are currently seeing is that that mainly infrastructure for economic development in those communities is missing. Yeah. So to say, the tools and the services and the know-how to really enhance the value creation of the community, yeah, itself, for their local market, yeah, but also going to nationwide markets, yeah. And so developing the potential of value creation, yeah, that will thrive market creation, yeah, and for the community itself, but this will also strengthen their position, yeah, towards nationwide markets and hopefully also to global markets. So I personally don't believe that we don't see any, or that we are also going to see coffee or export, yeah, in the future from Africa to Europe.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and but it would be better, yeah, if more of the value chain is with the people on the ground, yeah, and we see Motherland creating part of the infrastructure, yeah, to make that possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I leave it there because I'm going to ask a bit when we also speak on standardization, SDG, and so on, but more on this local value creation aspect. Then I got the who. For the who, I have only one question. Like, I understood community. I understand also you go Africa, and I understand you're focusing on, as you said, 3,000 to 4,000 people, which is normally more than one village, but more this typical village areas, yeah, especially in agricultural areas. It's kind of a, yeah, surrounding, one village with a surrounding, I'd say normally. Do you have a real grip on what you mean with it? Because you have 4 or 5 examples already, or pilots in view, so that would be interesting. Plus, I would be interested in saying, if you see them as beneficiaries, who benefits directly and who benefits indirectly by your activities in the community?
So do we have a clear picture of the communities? I would say no, but it's developing. Mm-hmm. So your description is pretty accurate in what we envision. Herman here in the call and Waynand also have been visiting the communities, so they speak up about that much more clearly than Sebastian or I ever could. But the picture that you described, I would say, is what we envision as well. So to mm-hmm. to your first question. Mm-hmm. To the second part, so the first order of effect here will definitely be around the farmers. That's the first order. Mm-hmm. So supporting farmers to identify with much more precision what needs to be produced to cater to the local market, to have direct access to the local market, to lose less of the produce in the process of transport, and while waiting for the market to take the goods, so they're just decaying. We've heard some really crazy numbers of loss of food during delivery under certain circumstances that are creating so much waste, so much useless waste, that the farmers would benefit definitely in the first order. Second order, the people in the community who are currently either purchasing food from the markets at too high prices in overpriced markets, and also the ones that are busy keeping themselves afloat with subsistence farming. So as they free up resources, on the one hand, financial resources, on the other hand, human resources to do other things, then in a third order, we can see things like education happening, things like improvement in living conditions, meaning better shelter, etc. All of these things happening.
To all members of the community then? Correct,
yes, correct. Sebastian, anything to add?
And the only thing I might add is that we also figured out that the post-harvest value chain, so the small businesses, that are taking care of catering the market or processing the food on site, that are also a very important stakeholder. So that could be, for example, the logistics on the ground, organized by a small group of people, call it a business, and they are empowered by a software provided by one of our startups to organize their logistics. And that would be, so to say, the breeding ground of running a small logistics startup on the ground, based on the technology provided by a startup. So that would also be, from my point of view, a first tier beneficiary of what we do, because we bring this type of technology to the community, and taking care that this is properly implemented.
Okay, I think we got an understanding about the what, about the who. Now it's like the how much. Like how much is do you think will the stakeholders experience from the outcome? How much change in your impact intention, so this local development aspect, will be experienced by the target group? And now I think target group would be community now. Let's speak in a second on startups and impact investors, but now community first, and then the two others second.
Well, how much? Always.
Just sorry to interrupt, but you can give also examples where, for example, you've seen in literature or in other comparable activities an effect where you can kind of try to lean on and I don't know, use it as a showcase, anecdotal evidence or first paper evidence or whatever you've there in research or experience.
So. I like thinking in pre-existing frameworks to make my life easier. So for measuring the well-being on the ground of people, I like to use Maslow, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I see them more as I put them in a circle, because I don't give them a hierarchy, because love cannot exist without life, and life cannot exist without love, to put it very bluntly. So they're interdependent, just as the SDGs are interdependent. And so, in other words, a good life is constituted by a high fulfillment in the dimensions of Maslow. At this point, I think it is very easy to argue that there is not a high fulfillment rate in most of the dimensions of Maslow. Not only in Africa, in other parts of the world, there's different kinds of poverty all around the world, right? So an increase in first of all, the physical well-being, meaning better nutrition, more healthy nutrition is the first felt sense on the ground that people will encounter and notice. From there, a higher sense of safety, coming with a sense of freedom through in more independence, and then slowly moving up and or around the dimensions as the community learns how to support each other in an even deeper way than they already do. I'm not saying they don't support each other, but the market forces at the moment don't provide a substrate to really support each other. Now, as we're creating a substrate that's specifically targeted towards supporting each other, they will also feel a stronger sense of belonging. So so we can make the case further. But Sebastian, you want to go?
Yeah, just to add so some small things here. So because, for example, if we are working with startups together that are bringing a more sufficient supply chain into the community to organize the flow of food, that should bring a difference to the people. And they will feel it, that they have probably an easier access to food and quality food, which will make a difference. The second thing is we should definitely create within over the course of the program is jobs. Because if we bring in infrastructure to create stuff that is adding value, we need to have people fulfilling the jobs. So people should find jobs within that short period of time, and also should learn, and this is the third one I would point to, applying that kind of mainly digital-based solutions to enhance and accelerate the development with this type of solutions. So that is also a skill from a learning perspective that the people should experience, that there are, for every problem they can imagine. So from an economic point of view, there should be a solution out there. And how to really apply the solution and make something out of it that everyone benefits from.
Mm-hmm. Let's keep the indicators you just said in mind, also because I want to refocus this when we discuss SDGs and measurement. Just trying to jump onto two other questions before we have half of the time over. Contribution. I think what I'm interested in on contribution is two sides. One side is this general question: why you? Why are you the right solution for the local community? Plus, do you have first ideas in either you have seen it already, that there's a proof in your concept, or how do you want to prove that your concept is actually doing better than the status quo? So one, why, like what is the idea, the theory behind it? And two, proof of concept, either existent or planned to make the proof. So
to make sure that we are not building kind of theoretical ivory tower concept just sitting around here in Berlin. That's why we reached out from the first day of the idea to the African people. And so everything we did is based on a participatory process of conversations with the people. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the first important foundation of Motherland. That nothing has just come out of guesses from two white guys sitting in Berlin. Mm-hmm. So it's all based on our experiences exchanged with the African people. So I think— Can you say 2-3 words on this? Like, how did this process evolve to Motherland? That would be quite interesting to just say, okay, how did the African opinion create this approach? So we started with a plain open question of saying, okay, what are your biggest challenges that can be solved with entrepreneurship, technology in a scalable way? So, and we did that narrowing down in a step-by-step process, with different people all over Africa. yeah, and run a series of interviews and questionnaires, all just answered by African people. Yeah, and we narrowed it down and then reassured with the group, yeah, the findings, and then we came up with the social economic leveraging point, which is the post-harvest value chain, because if you really want to live up to the potential of the African agriculture, we need to develop the market. Yeah, and only then, yeah, we have learned from our African partners, yeah, then this value creation will be enhanced, and so do the economy and the livelihood of the people. So this is kind of the
small intersection, Sebastian, just to saying this. This would be, from my perspective, a great value add if you show this process in your slide deck, in your pitch deck, a bit clearer, because I think that is a question you're going to definitely get. Why are there two white men, saying we found the solution for Africa? You said it, but I think to just say it on one slide once more, saying we are listeners. Yeah, we found they actually told us the problem, and they told us what are the biggest challenges, and then also why did we go to this sector and so on. So that is a participatory process. But what you also have, and that's what I understood, you can mirror this also with, I don't know, economic research and so on, that of course post-harvest is nothing that everybody says, oh wow, first time heard. It really, yeah, it's a clear sector, and now people tell you to do it, and also research tells you to do it.
Yeah. Thank you. That's
and so on this, I absolutely agree. So I had it in the presentation, but probably, and as I've learned from saying, that it was not clear enough. So that's a good hint. And the second piece is we looked at the African solutions. Yeah. So our belief was, okay, if there are challenges and opportunities, there will be African entrepreneurs try to solve that. Yeah, and not looking at what SAP or German startups or American startups or maybe development work or whatever is doing. Yeah, we said, okay, the African people know best what challenges are worth solving and what type of solutions. So that's why we built up the database for the solution and saying, okay, the Africans know best how to solve that. That doesn't mean that there is no other solution around that is coming out of Africa. Yeah, and we are not tipping into that. Yeah, definitely. But first we should look what's already there.
We found something interesting, and that is an element to answering the second part of your question, as we were looking at the startups in our database, and that is many of them felt a force to have to create an ecosystem around themselves. So what they were doing is they're focused on one specific aspect that they're really good at, let's say refrigeration. And then as they are trying to enter the market, they discover that they're essentially the only one in their environment expanding the future, which is what startups usually do. So they have to expand the future in a much broader way, and they would usually want to do, losing energy in the process as they are trying to create the general ecosystem around their initial product. So that they're forced into ecosystems building. And this is where we see evidence for our approach, where we say, let's take that work away from them. Let's have them focus on what they really want to do. And we take on the ecosystems orchestration for them, so they can really flourish in what they want to do.
Those are really, really good points. And that's actually, I wanted to drill this out of this question. I'm still questioning a bit, like, let me drill in one step more. If you see the developed markets, yeah, is there a proof of concept saying there is already a local activity going on? Because at the moment, I'd say in the developed market, you also don't have a proof of concept of your approach, because this smaller scale ecosystem is not existing around, for example, post-harvesting, because there's like the huge companies already trying to to grab already the value chain there. Yeah. What is, or is this already, or is it just my lack of knowledge on this?
So, I would answer that questions in the following. So we have seen centralization and accumulation of power, in those huge enterprises, mostly for the reasons of efficiency based on the infrastructure we have built over the past centuries, in Europe and across the world. So, but we don't have the infrastructure in Africa. And so the question is, are you able to build this type of centralized infrastructure also for the good of the people? I doubt it, because of the huge gap between the power of the large enterprises and the power of the people in the communities. So there is kind of huge difference. But now, as I said on the slide, with the moving from centralization to distribution, empowered by technology, today we have the technology to build kind of more localized, more decentralized economic units, that could be efficient, based on technology, because you don't have to build paved roads and railroads anymore, because in the future you can fly goods via drones. So you don't have to build railroads necessarily anymore. So we are moving away from centralized structures because of that development, towards more decentralized. And that's why I see a big advantage of those non-legacy structures in Africa, because we have legacy structures, and this is why we cannot move. From own observation and proof, working with so many corporations, in that structure, that Africa can leapfrog, so to say, directly into a distributed economy. And then the local communities and local entities might become efficient enough, to play a decent role also in a market where competition obviously will play a role, and compete also against larger entities that have other types of friction, and that also will then make them maybe less competition than a very fast moving boat on the ground in a community.
Great. It's interesting that also with these questions, we often come back to the what. I just want to give you some 2-3 words before I jump on the risk. That's the 5th question, and then I give you the words later. First, let's have the risks, because I have 2-3 questions really burning I want to ask. But then I'm gonna speak with you a bit more about measurement and what you have there as indicators. So risks. The risk on the project question is more on the likelihood that the impact will be different than expected. I would not ask this question in this broad sense. I would ask it more to the point, like, is this now an African experiment, or do such accelerator exist with such a local focus? So this leapfrogging idea, is this already happening somewhere else or in other sectors, or where do you got the idea from? And is this not only an intermediate step towards later having a national champion or a global champion taken over, and in a way enforcing again his own power supply chain to the local communities? So are you trying to build an utopia in a way, a local utopia, which could also kind of be broken down after the bigger players jump in? That is the second. And so it's just 3 questions, because the third one is, how do you ensure that communities, even if it does not work what you try out, that communities will not be broken afterwards? Because that is that's why I jumped out of development cooperation, actually, because I've seen quite a lot of approaches trying something out. You change some of the power structures, some of the ideas within one community, and after it doesn't work, and then development people are out, and the community is partly broken. So how do you ensure that the community is not broken afterwards, if it could be that it doesn't work? So these 3 questions: 1, is it only an African experience? 2nd, is it only an intermediate step, and how do you plan with bigger powers join in? And 3rd, how do you ensure community stability?
Everybody loves your questions, Julian.
Yeah. So I start with the first one before we forget it. So how do we base our approach on? Yeah. So first of all, so myself, I've built up accelerator programs for the last 10 years, and not only in Germany but also in Sri Lanka and in Ethiopia lately. Yeah, and what I'm experiencing is, especially comparing what's going on in countries like it's in those cases Sri Lanka and Ethiopia, that we see those type of impact entrepreneurs that are creating this type of leapfrogging approach, utilizing technologies, to build this decentralized, locally focused businesses. Yeah, and so this is an experience that I had firsthand, as seeing that this is happening. And recently I read a report, I think it was in the Guardian, about Rwanda, and they are building exactly that. They are building decentralized circular economies on a local level, so that you have most of the economic activities also in production, recycling, etc., based on local businesses, utilizing technologies, digital technologies, to making it feasible and efficient. And by doing that, they are really uplifting what's happening on the ground. And this is diving into your third question. The third question is, does it work when we are out? I think we shouldn't move in if it's not going to work, at least with the learnings. And we are doing that by hiring a local team, that is really working with the community. And we are bringing in solutions, which they in some way have to buy themselves. So we are not bringing in the solution that only we see. Let's say we want to bring in Miele fridges, to solve the problem of cooling. Probably there are other solutions around provided by African startups, and we need to put that into an economic business model, for the community that should work. It's not a guarantee that it work, but what our skill set, and our mindset is, we need to iterate what we don't know, and find ways that it's working. And by integrating the community and also the economic actors in the community into that project, empowering them, there's a higher likelihood that this is going to work when we move out. Because if they are not seeing any benefit, that would be a failure for us, or it would be a disproof of our hypotheses, which honestly it could happen. So we are not in that hybrid saying everything that we bring in will work. We know that we don't know, but this is giving us the advantage that we really work hard together with the people on the ground in a participatory way to make it work, to create benefits that are measurable, so that this will also stay within the community when we move out.
Thank you, Sebastian, for going first. 3 really hard questions. I had some time to come up with my own answers now. First question, I think, what I would like to refer to as a precedent is here in Europe, 120 years ago, electric light, right, coming in. That was the same kind of energy and idea, and leapfrogging an entire society into a new form of spending their days, because they suddenly could stay up longer and do things. Right, that's a huge change. So that is possible. I'm not equating us to those pioneers at all, but I just see that it's possible. 1. 2, our drivers are different than the drivers are of large corporations or state actors. And And I think that binds into your final set of questions, probably around the impact. I'm already answering part of those now. We are looking at things in a broad and holistic way. And Sebastian shared that in the presentation when he talked about Ethan Solovyev's 8 forms of capital. A corporate in the current environment will always optimize towards maximization of profit. If we optimize towards maximization of profit in 8 forms of capital, including intellectual capital, spiritual capital, cultural capital, social capital, the results for the community will be one meta result that will emerge out of this is that the community will be less dependent on financial capital and more resilient against the interests of purely financial capital gains of large corporates. So that's number 2. And number 3 is somewhat adjacent to that, because if we measure out in such an holistic way, based on the dimension of Maslow's, measured through the 8 forms of capital, put into one number that we can look at over time and have a really good understanding of the health of the entire community. I think this will give us a feedback system that tells us early enough if we are going in the right or wrong direction, and work with the people on the ground to course correct. So in a way, this would be a self-correcting system.
Great. Regarding time, I would just have then to drill it down, all these indicator discussions and measurement discussion, to one question. If you have to name one smart indicator, one, that is the best proxy, it's an indicator, yeah? It's not the truth. It's just an indicator that your project is running successfully. Which indicator would that be? One. That is the most difficult thing. I give you 10 seconds to think about by comparing a bit, because you said you build self-sufficient, decentralized solution, localized units, local development, leapfrogging, you work with community startups, impact investors. So what is the indicator flowing around, which would be the measurement, like the ex ante check, which you would like to monitor, and in 5 years you would say, hey, this is a number we're proud of?
In 5 years. So I just wanted to ask for the time frame, because some things that I would like to see as a proxy are definitely child expectancy at birth, life expectancy at birth. I think that's a very deep indicator, but you need a long time frame to be able to shift that in any significant way. I think that so there are 2 ways for me to answer this. One way is if I could measure laughter or the endocrine system and see hormones that are positive, that are associated with positive emotions, and I see that rising, that would be a really good indicator. But
positive
I think
emotions in a community.
Emotions in a community, yes.
Okay, positive emotions in a community. You got 2, so Sebastian, now it's your turn.
I have 1. So
yeah.
So I see the good jobs that are provided in the community and the will to stay in the community and not move to any city. Because that implies I have a good living, yeah. I can rely on the community. I want to stay there. That's more worth than going somewhere with uncertainty. I have a good job. I have a good income. I have a good life. Yeah. So if I'm really willing to stay because I have a job, whether it's farming that becomes cool again. We had this discussion with our African community. Yeah. So how to make farming cool. Yeah. To stay. Yeah. And I think there is kind of a movement. And if we really can contribute to that, yeah, that the people say, I stay there, I become an entrepreneur, I work somewhere and I have a job with a decent income, yeah, and potential for development, and technology is enabling that, then I'm happy. So jobs in that context of not being forced, but willing to have that job on the ground.
Okay, then I would stop and open the floor and just saying, aren't you then not using SDG 8 to enable all SDGs? But that's just a food of thought for you.
Okay, thank you. Wow, Julian, thank you so much for those questions. To be honest, I was nervous, and you have really amazing questions. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, also
I was nervous too, but great, well done.
It's good to be challenged, Julian, and
yes.
I'm sure you will challenge us even more.
Promise.
In the months to come, but we have so much positive feedback, yeah, because the people are inspired on what we do, but we need to have these conversations. Otherwise, you're not making progress. And so therefore, I'm really thank you.
So now I would like to invite everybody to ask your questions or
Julian,
give feedback or so
Herman, go ahead.
Herman wants to go. He's been waiting for this moment. Just 2 more sentences. Again, if you don't want to be shown, show your face on YouTube, no problem. Just post your question in the chat, and I will ask it for you. Just raise your hands, and we will call you. Herman, do you want to open?
Yes, Julian, thank you very much. I think it's a very necessary conversation we had today, and you kicked it off very well. Just 2 remarks from my side. We must not forget there is a hunger for growth and upliftment on this continent. I've been living in Africa with brief interruption since 1965, so I believe I've been around and seen that kind of hunger, experienced it. And my answer to your last question, namely the indicator, would be, for me, the indicator would be if we start reversing trends in Africa, because we have got a very strong movement to the big cities where people believe, not know, believe they might make a better income, yet end up in squatter camps, possibly being worse off than they were at the place where they came from. And for me, the indicator would be the first people are starting moving back where they came from originally. That for me is a strong indicator for us that we are on the right track. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Herman. Are there any other questions or remarks that you would like to raise? I saw Wayne, you posted something. I'm not sure whether that was a question, because otherwise I'm pretty sure. Daniel, you want to go? Go ahead.
My practical, great. I wanted to leave, I could not. Amazing, and thanks, Julian, for your questions, and I'm very excited. Quick question to me, practically, what support do you need? You talked about we are looking for a team, we are looking for, who is it who you need right now? So is it me, or is it my friend in Kenya, or who is it? What is it exactly? What helps you best now?
It is well-intended people who have the capabilities of funding this current phase. That's our most pressing need right now. We have amazing people on the ground. We can always have more, of course, but I think that's all going well. We just need to have the money to run the accelerator. So go ahead and call your friends. You're excused.
If there's no other question, I would just...
If I may, Julian, there's another thing. We're not piloting something. We are prototyping something, and I think there's a distinct
Amazing.
difference. And the reason we prototype is because we need to learn, and we know that we won't have problems drawing a community in, but how that then starts evolving, I think, is a learning process, and that is critical.
So great, you answer the question I had before I asked you. That's really great, because I was asking if you're just starting to pilot, prototype, whatever, sustainable local development 2.0. Yeah, so that is the title. Yeah, thanks, Hermann. That's amazing.
Michelle, did you want to ask something or comment?
I did. Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. It's really, really inspiring to hear people talk in this way. And really think about like a solution that could be scaled. What I was wondering is, I'm really intrigued by the idea of, how it could go wrong, exactly these risks that Julian was talking about. So, for example, here I'm working in a startup that does vertical farming, and they wanted to empower communities by providing vertical farms so that they can grow their own food and become more self-reliant and so on. They saw when they did this, and because of this, actually, other people started to be jealous about like, why aren't they included or excluded? Like, why are they excluded? And actually, the whole Islam was kind of, people felt excluded. Some people were like, okay, money is more important than community for these people, and like this financial possessing of something, it just completely.
Michelle, maybe you want to switch your camera off because you're dropping out.
Having the community like this little kind of bond. Wait, okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, now it's better. Yeah.
Okay. So I hope you heard everything I said. Question to
Michelle
would be, how to ensure, or how would you react that even the most vulnerable?
Michelle, I'm really sorry. Can you type your question? We cannot hear you. And then we will answer it. Thank you. Hermann, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, another remark I wanted to make was community versus individual projects. I think even though the work by really creating a cohesive community is a lot more challenging than tackling an individual project. Mm-hmm. But I believe, and I think there's proof out there, that the long-term sustainability of a community project is more secure and less risky than tackling an individual project. I remember from my time in Nigeria when the Peace Corps developed individual projects, and people would go away, and 3-4 years later they could come back, and out of 10 projects, 2 were still alive and 8 were gone. Whereas if you create a community where that cohesion kind of becomes a natural ingredient, I think you, over time, you minimize risk.
So maybe on what I think Michelle tried to ask on the risk side. So I think there is always a risk that something is not working, and we need to learn, to improve, etc. So to reduce the risk to a dealable amount, yeah, we have Herman and Waynand and Lerato really traveling personally from community to community, and we try to build relationships to the communities and to important stakeholders of the communities. Yeah, because we know we need strong partners within the community. Yeah, we cannot go in and don't understand maybe the cultural, ethnic, or whatever challenges of a community just by going in and now saying, here are some startups and it should work. I think this is not going to happen. Yeah, we are more a layer of empowerment, yeah, that helps existing structure, yeah, to thrive. Yeah, and we have a joint understanding of how development of the community and the potential of the community could look like. Does that reduce the risk to zero? No. Yeah, but I think it's really also important to have this type of participatory process to give as many people as possible to be part of that, yeah, and experiencing what not we are doing, but people of their community are doing, and giving hopefully as many people as possible the chance to become part of that, yeah, if they are motivated to be, yeah. And so, Julian?
I share this. I'm just thinking about, because this risk is real, and we could also think about deburdening a bit the motherland approach, because what you have is that you start with key contacts in the community. And these key contacts are then, I don't know, prospering, creating jobs, thinking about community development. And by this, you're going to spread the news, you're going to spread wealth, you're going to spread health, and so on. Yeah. So I think by just being more clear about not, we go and 4,000 people we talk to, and we're going to change all of them, but saying we have our entry points, and these are the current entrepreneurs, the current local entrepreneurs, which are farmers, first processors, people with entrepreneurial spirit who are eager to evolve, yeah. And there we start. And yes, this will make change, and it will make change to communities, and it will definitely be not only positive change, because change is always, for people who want to stay in the status quo, could be not positive, yeah. But to be just frank with this and deburdening the approach by saying everybody is later happy, but in average, you would say people stay. You could make a mobile survey in the communities before, after, every year, checking on happiness, or I want to leave the community. You know, by this, you could just say communities focus, but key contacts is what we have. And I think that is something you could think about.
Thank you, Julian.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, after all, we have at the core, there's a technological integration between the startups or the solutions that are there, which means that we can have potential outreach into the community in digital forms, and we can do these kinds of questions to the community, and that ties into Michelle's question, which I'm going to read out here now. How do you ensure that really everyone in the community will benefit from this, even farmers that would not have access to phones or technology? Because people that are a bit more educated, have startups, they will see and understand the benefit of this ecosystem more than the really vulnerable people in the community. So where are the boundaries of the communities? Who is excluded and who is included? So my first attempt at the first part of this question would be that So first of all, the price of devices is dramatically going down. So it becomes much easier to provide people with devices that are usable in that context and are working well enough. Even without counting on a Starlink dish in the community, we can also safely say that the setup can be and must be built in a way that it's at least resilient against network dropouts, so that the focus is less on the technology and whether there's a connectivity on the ground at that point, but more on the actual solution of a problem, and pointing away from technology, which we see as going down in cost anyway. So that would be my answer to the first one. And the boundaries of the community, in our view, have to be geographical. So there have to be, there cannot be an artificial boundary. There has to be a clear space, inhabited space between the communities in order to really differentiate between who's part of the community and who's not, in my definition. Sebastian, do you want to some add to that?
Yeah, so I think we still have this, let's say, technological boundaries, and they will probably stay in many communities also for a while, and there will be differences between the connected and the unconnected. I think we cannot change that today, yeah, but we believe it will be changed, yeah, in the near future. And that is also probably a reason why we start with Motherland in South Africa, yeah, where everyone is more or less connected to the internet, and we have equal opportunities to utilize connection to that type of technology. Yeah, and yes, we need to work on bringing that to every African in the end. Yeah, but this probably will take some time. Yeah, regarding the vulnerable groups within a community, I think we need to find the right partners, whether there are already maybe doing projects within the community, for example, empowering women and youth, yeah, which are normally vulnerable groups within a community, yeah, and we need to collaborate with those that are already active in that, yeah, and yes, we need to be aware of, yeah, but probably Motherland cannot solve all and everything, but we should be aware of those things and try to find the right partners within the community, involving them into the process so that also the vulnerable groups somehow can be included.
Okay.
I just want to add, Thomas, one thing with regards to community. You mentioned it must not be geographical, but we also need to consider that kind of tribal context in an African context. In other words, you've got to be careful not to include people who are, inverted commas, natural enemies from the core community. These are things which
These are exactly the things which we need to figure out, and why there's no point in Sebastian and me poking around with ideas from Berlin, but actually being there, working with a community to figure all of this out. This has been super exciting, actually, and interesting. I have learned a lot of new things about Motherland, and I hope everybody else as well. It was probably the fastest 90 minutes of the week for me, and and I'm really grateful for everybody to have been part of this. And I'd like to bring it to a closing, towards a closing. Are there any final words you would like to add here, Sebastian or Julian, in this?
Go ahead.
Maybe because I think Sebastian should be last. You're well on track. I see that you are so eager to learn and improve. And I think that is something when you want to prototype and when you don't want to say, we know the truth, that's exactly the right thing when you talk about impact and creating impact. So summed up, I really like that. And I'm really surprised how well it went, because you really jumped into this. And I'm really chapeau. You really did a great job. Yeah. So looking forward to continue the journey.
So yeah, thank you, Julian. Yeah, for all your good questions, ideas, and difficult question you throw in. But this is how you grow, right? And hearing all the easy questions over and over again, that's keep you small, right? And we are absolutely aware of, we are at the beginning of the journey. Yeah, and the exciting stuff is really ahead of us when we are on the ground and really making our hands dirty. Yeah, and I'm so eager, yeah, to experience that learning journey and find solutions for all the challenges that will come up along the way. Yeah, and but I'm absolutely confident that with the team that we have in South Africa, yeah, and also with Thomas and my mindset, which I guess is quite open and willing to learn, yeah, we will find something that is a foundation for something bigger than ourselves. Yeah, and you are definitely part of that, Julian, by challenging us. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to getting challenged all the time by so many great people. And I'm also happy that we started that. Yeah. Again, jumping into the cold water with such a format, and we should really establish that and having conversations with more people from Africa, from different backgrounds, yeah, and improving, because this is part of the learning journey. Yeah, and so thank you very much for Julian and all the others that are taking part of that, and please keep on doing the great work and the great questioning. Yeah, but also be kind to Motherland and support it, because it's a little plan, yeah, that needs to grow and to flourish, and we are just at the beginning of this journey of growth with Motherland. Thank you.
So one last time, thank you all.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.